นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings. As many of you know, at the moment, there's the Chinese Lunar Festival going on. The way the Thai community describe it, because it's also celebrated or practiced in Thailand, is opening the gates of heaven and hell to make merit for the hungry ghosts. The belief is that there may be all kinds of departed relatives, ancestors, beings who have died and died in a state of suffering, mind not peaceful, and needing help. After they've died, these beings have been reborn as what we call pretas, hungry ghosts. It's a class of being that the Buddha did mention, said to have large bellies but very small mouths, so they're always feeling hungry, but particularly hungry for merit, the fruits of good karma, good actions, the happiness of good actions. People who die don't have enough merit to support their mind, they say, reborn in a ghost realm, the realm of unhappiness, a state of woe. So humans, out of their compassion for departed loved ones who may be in a state of suffering, have this festival or ceremony or ritual where they come together and make merit for the dead. And Buddhists include this in their practice, maybe, and it's also taken on a sort of cultural significance as well. But spreading metta and sharing merit with all beings in all realms is a very Buddhist thing, a very commonly practiced thing. Somebody saying, they're talking about this the other day, and they also said, well, they used to live overseas and practice Buddhism, chanting, meditation regularly. But then when they moved to Melbourne, someone said, oh, you moved to a Western country where there's not much Buddhism practice, there's a lot more ghosts than in a Buddhist country. Whoever said that, I'm not sure what they're basing that assumption on, because I think there's also a lot of ghosts in Buddhist countries as well. And I'm not sure there's necessarily any more ghosts in Melbourne or Australia than anywhere else in the world. Historically, Australia has a small population, less people living here than many parts of the world, so perhaps they have less ghosts here as well. But because this person was told there are a lot of ghosts here, they were told don't chant and don't meditate and don't make merit, because all these ghosts will come round to you at night asking for merit, and they're so scared, too scared to chant, too scared to meditate, which is a very sad state of affairs. Because if you look at it another way, you might say, if we stop meditating, stop chanting, stop listening to the Dhamma, stop making merit, even more likely that we ourselves will become a hungry ghost. Because a hungry ghost is somebody with little merit. When they die, they're not peaceful, not happy, maybe full of anger, greed, attachment. So far from letting fear of ghosts, hungry ghosts, be the reason for you to stop meditating and making merit and listening to Dhamma, it should be all the more reason to practice the Dhamma, I would say. Make more merit to protect yourself. Protect yourself in the sense of just bringing more good qualities up in your mind. Make your mind happier, more skillful, stronger, more resilient, And this will be the best way to meet any ghosts that float your way or you come across, if such things happen, which most people never experience ghosts, do they? If we're honest, most people don't. But if you were to, prepare yourself by practicing mindfulness and chanting. Behind me on the shrine, you can't see, there's a statue of Somdet Buddhachanto Brahmarangsi. He's one of the most famous monks in Thailand. He sits there with his hands like this. If you ever see when we zoom out, can we zoom out the camera? Maybe we'll zoom out or get you to see Somdet Do. He's sitting there. Over there, you see how his hands are, one on top of the other. This is what they call in Thai Pritsanatham. It's like a Dhamma teaching, visual Dhamma teaching, or a very meaningful teaching. The word in Thai for the fist of your hand is gam. Gammu, which means your fist. But it's also the same word for karma. And he's got one fist on top of the other. The idea is the right hand fist is on top of the left hand fist. Meaning the good karma you make is keeping down the bad karma you may have made in the past, which gives its result and causes us trouble and problems through our life. And that would include hungry ghosts who come to bother you. So if you keep making good karma with your right hand, or symbolized by your right hand, and this should be the best way to deal with any ghosts or live human beings who cause you trouble, or maybe, more importantly, your own mind, which is probably your biggest troublemaker in life. Your own negative thoughts, delusions, greed, anger, delusion, what we call mental defilements. We need to make good karma all the time, or make merit, in order to deal with our own mental defilements. And Somdet Do said the best thing to chant for him are the three phrases which you're very familiar with. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami, I go to the refuge, I go to the Buddha for refuge, or I go to for refuge in the Buddha. I go to the Dhamma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge. So taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Somdet Do, he became the teacher of the King Rama IV, 160 years ago, and one of the most important Thai monks at that time in Thailand. But he also spent 15 years wandering in the forests of Thailand, which his own words, he said, full of wild animals and ghosts. And people asked him, how did you survive being in the jungle with all those wild animals and ghosts and disease as well, a lot of malaria and other kinds of disease? He said he chanted this all the time, Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami. He said if you encounter a ghost, if you were to, chant this. Chant the name of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and immediately your mind goes to a place of peace, happiness. And that's what it does to me anyway. If I recite Buddhang saranang gacchami, these qualities of piti and sukha, rapture, happiness, they arise straight away, immediately. Instant change of mental state for the better. And with that, you get a certain good energy. Maybe you might even say a certain protective energy. You might even say a boost to your immune system. So it may even help you with illness. Certainly does help you with illness. So far from not chanting, because you think you'll get bothered by hungry ghosts, I would chant twice as much as before, if that's what you're really afraid of. So whatever the obstacles you face in life, whether it is illness, aging, hungry ghosts, troublesome neighbours, troublesome work colleagues, troublesome family members, difficulties, financial difficulties, legal difficulties, all the problems that humans encounter, I would say a good place to start in dealing with your problems is recite these three phrases: Buddhang, Dhammang, Sanghang, Saranang Gacchami. What does it do when you say Buddhang, Saranang Gacchami? It brings mindfulness, brings your mind to a very peaceful, wholesome, skillful state. And if you recite over and over again, well, keeps you in that state of mind, brings up a sense of very positive energy. Some people get a lot of piti and sukha, some get light. The mind becomes brighter. And you get a certain confidence from that as well. You feel confident when you say the name of the Buddha and take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. These are exactly the qualities you need when facing something unknown, like the possibility of a hungry ghost or anything else. And if you want to make merit for your departed relatives who have become hungry ghosts, well, that's a good place to start as well. So sometimes our own mind, our own thoughts and views and opinions are wrong, and we have to be a bit cautious of that and question ourselves sometimes. Sometimes it's the opinions of friends, family members who say, don't chant, the hungry ghost will come and bother you. In my personal experience, when people do say they think they're being bothered by a ghost at their home or their place, when I tell them to go and chant and meditate, then the whole problem disappears. So far from not chanting to stop ghosts coming, I would say chant and the ghosts will go away. They don't bother people who take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, because Buddha Dhamma Sangha tends to be a very powerful, wholesome thought that if you hold it in mind, then it tends to smooth out both things in the immediate vicinity of where you live and are, and also on the psychic level as well. Tell you a true story. There was once I invited two senior disciples of Ajahn Chah to come here to join us for the Katina ceremony. This is many years ago. And after the Katina ceremony, we wanted to show them some of Australia, so we took them on a trip down what they call the Great Ocean Road, which is this beautiful drive along the ocean, the cliffs, to see the forests and the ocean and the various rock formations. It's the nearest monks get to a holiday. We don't go to Disneyland and movies and things like that. But we can sometimes enjoy nature. We go walking, hiking, or just for a drive, or just go to different beauty spots and soak in the peaceful atmosphere. Even the Buddha would appreciate nature and the therapeutic effects of nature on the mind. So anyway, we took these two monks to see some of the beautiful locations in this part of the world. And we stayed in some cabins, simple wooden cabins in the forest, which were not that different from a forest monastery. And everyone commented, this is like being in a forest monastery. They were cabins that you can rent out, so the lay people very kindly offered that. And it was 2 monks per cabin, so each cabin some monks living in or staying in for a few days. And on the first night, one of these monks did his meditation and chanting before he went to bed, which is a very normal thing for monks to do, especially when you're in a new place. You chant Paritas, you chant Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, you chant the Metta Sutta, all these different verses of protection. And then meditate, spread metta, make the mind calm, mindful. And then this monk lay down to sleep. And as he lay down, his mind converged in samadhi, and then he had a vision. Coming into his little hut was what he described as a naughty boy. It was a ghost. You might even call it a hungry ghost. Hungry ghost, naughty boy, who obviously someone who had died in that area perhaps in previous era was still left there, came into his room and started insulting him and saying, "Oh, you're a really bad monk. You're a smelly monk. I don't like you." Just in the way a naughty boy might insult an adult, a grown-up. So the monk said in this nimitta, because it's a nimitta, it's not a real naughty boy, it's a ghost. He said in this nimitta to the naughty boy, he said, "Oh, you better watch it. I'm a Buddhist monk. I've taken refuge in the Buddha. And my teacher is Ajahn Chah, and he's an enlightened being, an arahant. So you start insulting me, the student, wearing the robes given to me by the Buddha and Ajahn Chah. It's probably not very good for you. I really wouldn't recommend you to do this course of action." And the little boy sort of stood there, confused and kind of startled, probably never encountered a Buddhist monk before. And then at that moment, another little being came into the room, and this was more what the monk described as more like a Western-style fairy. What he described as a Tinkerbell character, a little fairy character, all bright, very bright, peaceful, with a lot of radiance and rapture emanating from this fairy dressed in white, but like a young girl, Western girl. She came in and she told the little boy off. She said, "Oh, these are monks, Buddhist monks. You should be more respectful. Don't be so rude." And the monk, he said to the little boy, he said, "Yeah, I've got a picture of Ajahn Chah here," and he had one in his bag. So in this vision, he took out the picture of Ajahn Chah. He said, "See, this is Ajahn Chah. He's an arahant." And he put the picture back in his monk's bag. And then the little boy realized his mistake and apologized and ran away, all embarrassed and ashamed. And then the fairy, the female fairy, went into the bag of the monk, disappeared, kind of went to where the Ajahn Chah picture was. So this is just a vision. You could say it's just a dream, but monks quite often have these kinds of visions, sometimes in their meditation, sometimes as they're falling asleep or waking up as well. So it was just a good example of the power of Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi, taking refuge in the Buddha, and how it protects you in these situations. And over again over the years, many monks have proven this to be true. In Thailand they have a kind of ghost, they call it Pi which is a kind of ghost that grabs your chest and makes you feel like intense burning pain in your chest, and makes you feel like someone's throttling you, even killing you. Feels like that. And this ghost will grab you around the neck. One time I was staying in the forest and I had that experience just out of the blue. I was sitting there and suddenly it felt like someone was trying to throttle me. So I recited Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi, and straight away that ghost disappeared. So many of my friends and teachers have had similar experiences. When you think of the Buddha or recite the words Buddha or Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi, or chant anything, Iti Piso Bhagava or any of the Paritas, this seems to be the best protection against these kind of supernatural beings that may bother humans sometimes, or just your own fears and anxieties that come up associated with the problems of daily life. Chanting can be very powerful like this. So never underestimate the power of reciting the word of the Buddha, or the words of the Buddha, or the name of the Buddha. And we do need to make merit regularly, practice dana, keep the precepts, meditate, listen to Dhamma. It's good for us, and it tends to be good for our families and people around us, and good even for hungry ghosts who require merit, which is basically the good feeling, the happiness generated by our good actions. When you share that, you dedicate with them, then their state of mind can improve. It can even be a cause for them to be reborn in a better place in some instances. So don't be put off by what other people say. What other people say sometimes can be quite useful, but you have to learn how to be mindful and reflect on the words of others, especially nowadays with internet, social media, and so many means of communication. We're bombarded by what other people say every day. We can't just accept everything at face value or just take everything as true. We have to learn how to establish mindfulness and give some wise attention and consideration to what we hear. It's part of the Buddhist practice. And one of the things I always found inspiring about Ajahn Chah and many other meditation masters that I've lived and trained with is this ability just to consider things but then put them down. We have to learn how to put things down, and this includes the words of other people. And that's both sides of the coin as well, not just the insults and the criticism from others, but also the praise as well, and the kind words and the words we like to hear. We also have to learn how to put them down, as it were. Why? Because the alternative is you carry them around in your memory and your mind all the time. And the more you carry, the more you're weighed down. And the more you think, and the more you worry, and the more you desire the praise, and you hate the blame. Ajahn Chah used to say, somebody you like comes along and praises you. Whether it's true or not is one thing. They may praise you when it's not deserved, or they praise you when it is deserved. But you hear the words of praise, the kind words, the sweet words, and you might cling on to that for another year, remembering, they were the ones who told me how good I am. And it puts you in a good mood every time you think of it, but it can also become addictive or cloud your judgment, because you just become obsessed with these words of praise, and maybe you stop reflecting on your faults or things you do wrong, or you don't become objective anymore, do you? And similarly, we don't like words of criticism or insults. We tend to remember them, carry them around in our mind like heavy bags. So how do we put things down? Well, we have to be mindful. We have to establish mindfulness and then give some wise attention to what's going on. So there's maybe it's beyond your control to stop someone. On social media, they like what you've texted or the picture, or they dislike it, they praise it, they criticize it. You may not be able to stop that. Or in real life, in your workplace or at home, people say things. They say things that you agree with or like, or they say things you don't like. They criticize you. You may not be able to stop or control that. The more important thing is, how do you respond to it? What do you do with your mind when these things come your way? Do you pick them up and hold on to them for the next year or 10 years? Or are you able to put things down? Having considered them, can you put them down? And just in the first instance, when you receive praise and blame, what is it? It's just words, isn't it? Words from another person. So if it's visual, if it's a text or email or comment on social media, that's all it is, a visual image that your eyes see, and your mind interprets as praise, blame, true, false, whatever. And then the whole problem starts from there, doesn't it? Once you've let it into your mind, then you sort of pick it up, and then you start thinking about it, reacting to it, puts you in a good mood, puts you in a bad mood. Or if it's audio, verbal words from another person, then it's sound coming to your ears. We do the same. We interpret that sound. This is good, or this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. We start to form opinions based on whether it's to our liking or not, what we've heard. But it's actually just sound. Words are just sound. Text is just visual. If we were to be really mindful, that's a reflection you can always bring up. This is just sound coming to the ear. Sure, the sound has meaning, and that meaning may be quite useful, so it's not that you should always reject it, but in essence that's what you're dealing with, sights and sounds, different kinds of sense contact, or memories based on previous sights and sounds, so thoughts. We have to learn how to deal with that, and as you meditate you'll see a lot of our thinking is based on this kind of thing, isn't it? How you react to pleasant and unpleasant sense stimulation. So the Buddha encouraged us to put things down. He didn't say react with aversion or pleasure or attachment, but he just said consider, but then put it down. Don't carry it around with you. Put down whatever you hear or see, put it down, and then your mind is free again. And you can do that because you don't actually need to carry around all this stuff. The reason we attach and carry stuff around is because we give a lot of meaning and importance to it, and our mind doesn't quite catch itself as it's doing this. Not mindful enough, doesn't give enough wise attention. So most people don't like, say, insults, criticism. But actually, what we should train ourselves more is establish mindfulness and say, well, what are they saying? Is it true or not? Is it correct? Is it incorrect? If it's words that you like, even if it's true, if you carry it around, it can still be a cause of suffering because you want more of it. You go seeking for it, and then the next time you meet that person, they ignore you. It's like, oh, they didn't say anything nice to me today. Or even worse, they turn from praising you and saying nice things to criticizing you. It gets even worse, doesn't it? Because we've given meaning to it, we hold on to the memory, the perception. That gives rise to some expectations, some wanting, liking. Whether it's insults or praise and saying sweet things, it's the same. If we're not mindful, we let it into the mind and then we start thinking about it, holding on, craving. We say craving is the technical term, dhanha, craving, and then upadana, attachment, or clinging. This is going on a lot of the time. And you see, especially with young people, as we know, they have lots of suffering over social media because you post something. Probably the worst thing is that nobody is interested at all, ignores your post. Or they don't like it, or they like it this time but next time they don't like it. On and on it goes. So whether it's from just what people say or what you receive online, it's a huge part of the human experience, how to navigate all this and deal with it skillfully. But the Buddha's already pointed out we need to establish mindfulness and bring up some give it wise consideration. In Thailand they have a funny story to kind of illustrate this. Say with insults, most people when they're criticise or insult, they won't stop and think, is it true or not? They just react. I don't like this, I don't want this. And even if it's true and you might know it's true, you still don't like it. It's painful on the ear, it's painful, the memory of it. Every time you see that person who's criticised you, don't feel happy. Even if it's true, we feel like that. And all the more so if it's unjustified or untrue criticism, fault-finding. We get even more upset. So in Thailand they have this story like, say you're walking along the coast where there's a lot of palm trees, coconut palm trees, and you get monkeys there, and sometimes monkeys are mischievous. Like when I've been in the forest in Thailand, sometimes the monkeys, when they work out where you're staying, they'll come along and they'll play with you for their own amusement. They'll throw things at you sometimes. They drop branches on you or fruit on you, or they'll, like as monks, we put up umbrellas with mosquito nets. Sometimes they jump on your umbrella and they swing it around just to have fun. They'll do all kinds of things. Monkeys can be mischievous, as you probably realize. So anyway, there's this guy walking along the coast and there's coconut palm trees with coconuts in them. And there's mischievous monkeys up there, and the monkeys see the man coming, so they throw the coconut at this guy. So the average person gets a coconut thrown at them, they don't like it. I mean, that can be lethal either as well. Sometimes people die from that. So he gets angry, so he throws it back, the coconut, he throws it back at the monkeys, and very unlikely to hit the monkey because monkeys are fast. Maybe even risks further injury because you throw it up, it's going to come down again. And you certainly get very hot and bothered throwing coconuts in Thailand. So he doesn't do very well. But another man comes along and he sees the monkeys, and the monkeys try and throw a coconut at him, so he dodges it. And then he picks up the coconut, and instead of getting angry, he says, free coconut. And he walks home with a free coconut and splits it open, drinks the milk and eats the flesh, and he's very happy. Same situation, different response. And they say it's like a bit like this with the words of other people, or the texts of other people, the comments of other people. You can actually get a lot of benefit from them. They're teachings. You don't have to always get angry or worried or afraid with the comments of others. You can learn from them. Use them as food for your insight and wisdom and understanding. So maybe if somebody criticizes you, you just pause and think, is this true or not? And if it's true, maybe it's helpful. They're teaching me something here, pointing out a fault. Or if it's not true, maybe they're still giving you some use, some benefit, because you think, I got the chance to reflect on this criticism that may actually not be true, but it's still something that's useful for you to see whether you have any anger or any sense of self is triggered. Is your mind shaken by these words of criticism, fault-finding? As anyone who meditates will understand this, is a big part of meditation is dealing with the pleasant and the unpleasant sense objects that come our way, and speech of other people is a big part of that. So you can either treat all this praise and blame as coconuts to be taken home and consumed, or you can start throwing them back and getting into more trouble. It's the first thing you learn as a monk. Monks are not supposed to abuse people, insult people, argue with people. So when they insult you, which does happen as a monk, you have to learn how to be restrained, mindful, not give in to your anger. Just take it and then contemplate it. Ajahn Chah's teacher, Luang Por Thongrat, was a very well-known, had very interesting, creative ways of dealing with this. So he'd always smile when he received criticism, because his behaviour sometimes seemed a bit eccentric. People would criticise him, they'd be rude to him, insult him a bit. And he always said, today I got something good, I got insulted. He'd always take it away as a teaching. One time, quite often he'd go into the villages, and in those parts of Thailand and in that era, like 100 years ago, people were very poor. So sometimes they'd just give plain rice to the monks. That's all the monks would get to eat for a day. Forest monks, they're just staying in the forest somewhere, they go into the village, people give them plain rice, but after many days that's not a very good diet to survive on. And often they did have other food, but they just gave a little bit to the monks, a little bit of rice. And because Luang Por Thongrat was already enlightened and a teacher, he sometimes, for their own benefit, he would scold them and say, you should give better food to the monks. Because we believe he was enlightened, it's not out of his own greed, but out of his wish for the lay people to make better offerings for themselves, make more merit for themselves. So he'd scold them and say, only dogs eat plain rice. Humans eat curries and fruit as well. Or things like this, which some people would understand and realise, he's teaching us something. Other people wouldn't. They'd get offended, get upset, and criticise him back. One man got so upset with this that he wrote a letter to Luang Por Thongrat, and it was on a piece of paper, and he wrapped some lead pellets, like most villagers would have shotguns and they'd use lead pellets in their shotgun. So he wrote the letter of criticism of Luang Por Tongrat, and then inside the letter he wrapped it up around some lead pellets, which is like a threat, a veiled threat, and then put it in his bowl one day when he came by on alms round. Didn't put any food in. So he got back to the monastery and had one of the monks read the letter out to him, and the letter said, "Oh, you're a bad monk, you're always asking for food, criticising the villagers, you're a bad monk," and just complaining about him. And there were some bullets in there as well, so it was the man was obviously very angry. So Luang Por Tongrat took the letter and the bullets and put them under his pillow and slept on them every night and said, "Oh, I've got something really good today, I'm going to sleep with this every night," as a reminder to let go, to be patient of what other people say. And actually he never ate any food that he had asked for or told the lay people to bring to support the monks. He'd do it for the other monks because they were just eating plain rice. So his mind was very pure, but some people maybe didn't realize that, or they just were very fixed in their own ways. But he said everything they said to him was a teaching, something useful, something very valuable to him. So he put it under his pillow, just like when you lose a tooth when you're a kid, waiting for the tooth fairy. All these words we receive from others, both praise and blame, they're the teachings. That's how the Buddha encouraged us to reflect on them. Just as our own thoughts are, aren't they? Your own thoughts can be the same. It's like you have a person in the back of your head constantly praising yourself, raising yourself up, sometimes scolding yourself, putting yourself down. Sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's just your own mind is stuck on replay and it's not meaningful at all, but you're just stuck in kind of a negative way of thinking over and over again. You have to do the same thing. When these thoughts come up, particularly when you're meditating, you observe your own thoughts. Oh, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. Establish mindfulness. Don't just get attached to them and react to them. Try and keep more calm and detached and observe what's going on. Oh, this is my own conditioning, isn't it? It's my karma. Where do these thoughts come from? They don't come from other people, they come from yourself. Even when other people praise us, criticize us, that's one thing, these words coming to our ears or the text you read. But then what you do with them in your mind is your own karma. This is something fresh, isn't it? And you have to get to understand this point. The point of making karma is in the present moment, when you read the text or you hear the words, how you respond, what you do next is your karma. Current moment, present moment karma. The text coming to you or the words coming to you, that's old karma. So maybe there's reasons why people praise you or blame you coming from the past. But actually what you do with that information, that sense data, is present moment karma. How you respond, how you manage your mind at that moment, that's where your new karma is made. So what do? Do you give a lot of importance to it and hold on to it and suffer with it for the next year? Or do you understand what's being said or what's been written and then put it down again? If you're practicing what the Buddha taught, you learn to put things down. Doesn't mean to say you deny or blot or react with aversion, but you're just knowing and then putting down. And that brings a lightness to the mind. Even insults can bring a lightness to the mind when you establish mindfulness. Say, oh, they've insulted me or they've criticized me. This is an unpleasant bit of sense object coming my way, unpleasant feeling. It doesn't feel nice to be insulted. But it's still something you can contemplate and put down. It's impermanent. It's not really a self or a being. It's just a word or a few words. And then you put it down. And your mind can actually gain some insight from that, some understanding. Can actually In theory, you could become enlightened hearing an insult from another person. Doesn't mean to say you've got to go and seek them out to get enlightened, but if you are truly mindful and seeing them as impermanent and not self in that moment, your mind goes to a different place, doesn't it? Goes to a place of equanimity. Once you establish mindfulness. They're all teachings. Quite often we don't accept the teaching, no? Instead of responding with mindfulness, reflection, wise reflection, we just react with our more negative emotions. We make more negative karma. We throw the coconut back at the monkey. We argue, we insult them back when they insult us. Or at the very least in our mind, we attach to the pleasure, the pain. We want more of the pleasure, we want less of the pain. And that determines how we act, what we do next, how we think, our attitudes, how you view other people. So, people who praise you, you tend to like. People who criticize you, you tend to dislike. It's not to say criticism or praise are wrong or right. They are just what they are. They may be true, may not be true. The more important thing is how do you react? How do you cope with it? How do you manage your mind? And what kind of karma do you make? A lot of criticisms people give are actually true in one sense, meaning you yourself may not have made that mistake or have that fault, but it's still true. If somebody calls you lazy, say, you may not be lazy. You may work hard, or you do everything you're supposed to do, at home or at work or wherever you are. But it's still true. If someone is lazy, this is a bad habit. That's just the truth, isn't it? Nobody got enlightened by being lazy. Nobody gets a job done being lazy. It's just true. Laziness doesn't really lead on to anything good. So if someone calls you lazy, the first thing is establish mindfulness, not get angry, but consider, have I been lazy in this situation or not? But you may also reflect, just laziness as itself is a defilement, it's not a good thing. And you learn something, or it reminds you of a truth. And all defilements are like that. Someone may say that you stole something that you didn't steal. So if you can, you explain the situation, try and explain what's true, what's not. But just in general, stealing we consider to be a bad characteristic for a human being. It leads to trouble, makes everybody uncomfortable. It's following greed rather than following compassion and wisdom. It's a bad quality. That's anyone who reflects on it can say that's true. Stealing is bad. So even if someone criticizes you, tells you you've stolen something when you didn't, it's still a truth that can remind you of the truth. Stealing is a bad thing. You may know you didn't steal in that situation, or maybe you did steal, but if you didn't, you still can gain something from their unfair criticism. You may agree with them, stealing is bad, but it may not apply to you. It all depends on the situation. When I was a kid, sometimes, in the way kids are, people assume the worst from you sometimes. I don't know about you. When I was a kid, I was growing up in London, people just see a 13, 14-year-old kid, they assume the worst. So sometimes I was accused of stealing something that I hadn't stolen, or doing some mischief that I hadn't done. So I'd get upset and complain and spend a lot of time complaining about this person or that person because they've made a false accusation. Later on, when I started meditating, I realized, don't need to complain or get upset. I just reflect, it's not true. What they say is not true. Even happened once when I was in a monastery in Thailand. I was staying, it wasn't a monastery, it was just a piece of land, forest land. And I was staying there on my own. I was wandering in the forest and I was staying there, and the lay people invited me to stay there and meditate. partly because they wanted to support a meditation monk, partly because they wanted monks in this bit of forest to stop other people cutting the trees down. It's quite a common practice in Thailand. You get a lot of illegal logging, and if you've got monks there, then people can't cut the trees down so easily. So they invited me to stay, and I was there for a few months. It was very hot, and the food was awful, but I was very happy to be there because it was a good, peaceful place to meditate. And there had been people stealing trees, big forest trees, which are worth a lot of money. It had happened, but when I was there, it stopped. So it seemed to achieve the objective of the local landowners. They were happy that the tree logging had stopped. But it took a while for that news to reach the local government, and one day they sent in a lot of officers from the forestry department, and they all had shotguns and machine guns and rifles. They came in, a whole truckload of them. They came literally running up to where I was camped in the forest as though they were ready for action, pointing their guns. And there's little old me sitting there meditating in the hot sun, sweating profusely. They all ran up and surrounded me. And they said, "You've been logging." I said, "No, I haven't." I said, "Where? Where are the trees I've cut down?" I was just a monk with a bowl and a robe. That's all I had. So it didn't take them long to realize that they were falsely or mistakenly accusing me. But at first they were very bossy and very rude and very aggressive, and they're pointing guns in my face. So I had to explain, no, that's not the truth. I don't cut trees down. I love trees. I hug trees. I plant trees. I water trees. I look after the forest. I want to be in the forest. I'm a forest monk. I talked to them for a long time, got them all to settle down. Then I offered them a cup of tea, which they declined. And in the end, they all bowed to me and said, "Oh, we're sorry to disturb your meditation." And before they left, they said, "Oh, Lumpur, do you have any amulets?" So I gave them all some amulets to keep them happy. And they went away. I said, you lead a difficult life. You often encounter criminals who have guns and they shoot at you and you have to shoot at them. So I realized you have a lot of danger. So I gave them some amulets of the Buddha to keep them happy. So all's well, ends well in that situation. But at first they were very they were very critical of me and very rude, aggressive. Sometimes in life it's like that, isn't it? People accuse you of things you haven't done. You have to just bear with it. It's like, oh, this is something good. I can contemplate this. Now I know what it's like to have someone stick a machine gun in my face, someone to call me an illegal logger when I'm not. Somebody to threaten, they threatened to, take me off the land and put me in prison. But no, they didn't do that in the end. But it's good to just contemplate it, isn't it? When these things happen, if they happen. Must be old karma. I thought, maybe in a past life I made a lot of false accusations against someone. It's all coming back to me. But it all ended very peacefully and happily, and that was the end of that. And in the long run, I helped just to protect the forest for a little while, which is good. We have to learn how to contemplate these things. You can't expect to go through life and nobody ever criticizes you or says something that's not true, false accusations. It's just impossible. Even some of the best monks, enlightened monks, it happens. Occasionally even really amazing, good, enlightened monks get put into prison or threatened with legal action, or all kinds of things happen because of other people's jealousy or wrong views or whatever. It happens. There's a famous monk in northern Thailand, Kruba Sivichai. Lumpur Man said he's a bodhisattva, a true bodhisattva. He's a very brave, courageous monk. Walk around northern Thailand, building chedis to house relics of the Buddha, restoring old chedis that have fallen down, going up to the most remote mountain tops, getting people to build roads and build temples in remote places. He's very, very popular with the people, but The government didn't like him because he was so popular. They were jealous of him. So he had a lot of problems with him, and people made false accusations. And at one time, the local monks and the government sided together, and they got him put in prison for 2 years. And the head monk of the whole of Thailand had to send them a letter to say, "Oh, you are putting a very good monk in prison. It's time to stop. Let him out." After he was let out, he said, "I'm never going back to Chiang Mai city," because that's where he was put in under what you might call house arrest or temple arrest for 2 years, and he had to leave afterwards. And he said, "I'm never going back. They treated me wrongly. They haven't behaved well. I'm never going back here." He said, as long as the Ping River, which is the river that runs through Chiang Mai city, and until it runs north, because it normally runs from north to south. He said, until it runs north, I'm not coming back here. And rivers never flow backwards, so that was the end of that. He never went back to the city. Strangely enough, many years later, the king of Thailand built a dam called the Bhumibol Dam. It's named after the king of Thailand, in another province. And the Ping River that flows down to that dam was dammed, and the current started to flow backwards, because once you dam a river, then you get a backing up of the water. And it backed up all the way to Chiang Mai. And at the same time, that year, somebody thought, "Oh, we treated Kruba Sivichai so badly, we really need to build a statue to him and put it up in the city just to remind ourselves what a good monk he was and how badly treated he was, to try and rectify things, ask forgiveness." And they had an asking forgiveness ceremony. And at the same time, this river started to flow backwards to the city because the new dam had just been completed. And a lot of people noticed that, and they said, "Oh, his words came true. He returned to the city," or his statue did, when the river flowed north or flowed backwards. That's the power of Bodhisattva, his speech. We say it's Satya Dhamma, true Dhamma. Whatever they say tends to come true. So you better be careful. They say don't annoy a Bodhisattva, because if they say something, it might come true. Maybe they point out your faults. You should rectify your faults or ask forgiveness when you're rude or insult somebody. The power of the Dhamma is like that. The best speech of all to receive is Dhamma. The best dana to give is Dhamma. The best speech to give out is Dhamma. It has a certain power to it. That's why we chant. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami. There's a certain power to words of truth. So what is the best refuge in the world and out of the world? Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So if you say those words, it tends to have a very powerful effect on your own mind, protective effect, and a powerful effect on other people's minds, which is why people love to invite monks to chant. And it tends to have a good effect even on animals, and has a good effect on hungry ghosts, devas. Any being in any realm tends to agree those words are very good words, very powerful words. So maybe I'll leave the talk there tonight, and before we finish, there's a chance for some Q&A.